Welcome to Tasty Tuesdays, an Imbed with Possibilities podcast with Lorene Hughes. That would be me. And tonight I have the very special privilege of having Matthew Kuhn, otherwise known as Balaji, here with us to talk about his incredibly special journey on the Camino Santiago. So, hi, Matthew. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
All right. So before we start with our images, I'd love to know, and for the listeners to know, what on earth led you to do a thing called the Camino de Santiago?
Yeah, cool. It's a bit of a story. I'd first heard about it 2015, 2008, 2014, Christmas, I reckon. And just through a friend of mine, through the Shanty mission that I was involved with at the time. And she actually showed me, it was Christmas Day and I was single, she was single, so we were just having lunch and that together. And she was talking about how she'd started this big hike, this Camino, and she never finished it because she hurt her knee. And she said, oh, there's this movie. And we started watching this movie called The Way. And to be honest, that was the first time I'd actually seen it. And there was just nothing. I walked away going, it just didn't resonate at all. And it was about 6 months later, my mate Samuel he comes from the Swiss-German border, and he'd gone back home and been to Italy and Paris and stuff. And we were at the Wollonga market, and I was drumming because I was white feather drumming in those days, and we were drumming and we're just chatting, and he talked about the Camino, and I just had this light bulb moment, and so I went home that evening after the markets and all that, and I downloaded the movie off the internet and watched it, and before the movie even finished, I'd cried about 3 times and just went, wow, I'm going to do this, and so that's how it initially started.
Wow. So how long was it from the point of watching the movie to like booking your tickets and, actually landing in? So where do you start from with the Camino?
Well, it was basically nearly 12 months from when I had that moment of watching the movie for the second time. It was nearly basically 12 months from that I actually boarded the plane. So there's many different walks. There's many different ways you can do it. The main way is what they call the Camino de Santiago, or the French way. And that starts in a little village on the French side of the border in the Pyrenees called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And then they walk through to Santiago de Compostela, which is where the famous cathedral is. And now with this walk or pilgrimage or whatever you want to call it, it's been going for thousands of years. It's an old pagan one, and the pagans used to navigate by the stars at night, following energy ley lines and all those sorts of things. About 1,000 years ago, the Catholic Church took it over, and that's why, mainly for the Catholics, or the people doing it for religious reasons, their Camino ends in Santiago de Compostela at the cathedral, whereas I've done it both times and gone to the coast of Finisterre and Muxia, which is the original pagan pilgrimage. I didn't get to... Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, so both times I've walked all the way from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Finisterre, which is approximately 900 kilometres. You walk more than that because, especially in the bigger cities, you know, if you have a day off or whatever, you do extra walking, you go see things that you hadn't seen before. So I just basically say it's a 900 kilometre journey. Yeah.
Wow, bloody amazing is what I have to say. I'm just going to be bringing up a picture of the actual Camino trail and some of the different ways that you can go. So what I might get you to do is start to have a little chat about this while I do that.
Yeah. Well, this was me at the Arc de Triomphe, obviously a famous landmark in Paris. So when I went in 2016, it was my first time to Europe, and I booked in for a couple of nights. I had a couple of days so I could explore a bit of Paris, and it was just amazing. It's just such a beautiful city. I just loved it. I'd love to go back to Paris one day and spend a week there. But things like Arc de Triomphe, did the Eiffel Tower. I didn't walk it because I was a bit worried about injuring myself before I even got to Spain. So I took the elevator up, but it was still an amazing thing to go up to the Eiffel Tower, go to the top and have a look around. I did so many things, like just on the Saturday in Paris, I worked it out that I walked roughly 30 kilometres. I just spent the whole day, because originally what I was going to do in Paris was follow the path when they had the French Revolution. This is where they took all the people to have their heads chopped off. But the information I had wasn't complete. So I ended up doing side tracks, doubling back, getting lost. So, yeah, I worked it out roughly. Well, I know I walked over 30 kilometres that day in Paris, and it was a stinking hot day. And so my Camino had well and truly started. And this will tie into the story from the first Camino. And because all that walking I did, I'd actually had a little blister, which I didn't know. And it actually popped. So the skin was broken on my heel. So that'll lead into more shortly. But like I said, Paris, I was just blown away from a boy who grew up in the country in South Australia to walking through this old city, crossing the Seine or the river anyway, the bridges and all the things you see on movies where all the artists had all their paintings and stuff on the side of the river. And I can't even remember what half the places are called, but yeah, I was just fascinated and blown away. Loved it. Like I said, I'd love to go and spend a week back in Paris and getting out a little bit more and seeing some other things. So, yeah.
That is so wow. This whole thing fascinates me. And I mean, as you know, I've heard bits and pieces of the story over the time that we've known each other, and it still fascinates me. It still really does, you know. So there we go. That should be a little bit of a help for where you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, so on the far right, I guess it's the same as people looking at it. The first little red dot, you can see it says Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And again, that's a very old historic village, very old. It's a beautiful, well, it's not really a village, it's a town, but they call it a village over there. It's just a beautiful spot. And then on the far left, they don't have Muxia on there, but they have Finisterre. So Finisterre is the most northernest point of Spain. And when the Romans controlled it a couple of thousand years ago, that was known as the end of the world, because they believed if you sailed out, you were going to actually sail off the edge of the world. And depends on whether you're flat earth theorist or not, that may happen. But I'm not judging anyone or anyone like that. So just for people looking, if that's where they're looking at it. So on the far right is where I started off. in this beautiful little mountain village in the Pyrenees, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and on the far left is Finstera, which is the 000 marker, and also the famous lighthouse. And I never did it, and that's very shunned against now. But in the old days, a lot of pilgrims, you can still walk down past the lighthouse down to the rocks. You can't go too far, otherwise then you actually do fall into the ocean. There's no beaches there. You can still see little remnants of fires and that where pilgrims used to burn their clothes, their boots, as a way of,
It's like, I've done it. Now I'm done.
Finishing their Camino. But if I did that, I would have been walking around naked and had nothing to wear. So I wouldn't wish that on the populace. So.
There's something that they mentioned in the movie The Way was this. Could you tell us a little bit more about these little shells?
Yeah, so that shell you can see, I'm pointing at the screen, no one else can see what I'm pointing at, with the red cross, with the red cross. So that was actually my Camino shell that I brought in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in 2016 before I started my pilgrimage, because it's traditional for pilgrims walking the Camino to wear the shell as a sign that they are pilgrims. So you'll see most people wearing a shell either around their neck like I did. Some people stick them on the back of their packs, whatever. So, but the shell does represent the pilgrims walking the Camino. And so that was my shell, which I walked with in 2016. I kept it. And in 2019, when I did it for a second time, I wore it for most of it until I got to this little village called Montagne, which I'd stopped at in the first one. And as you can see with the other shells that are there, that wasn't there the first time in 2016, but they'd gotten this little tree thing and pilgrims were leaving their shell there. So I left mine there with many other shells, as you can see. And so I took one last picture of it. And for me, that's just a way of letting go. It was very important to me for the first time I did it. It was a very important thing. It was a personal thing. I didn't. But I realised I didn't need to continue to wear it. Now, as you know, I've talked about this a few times. I know I'm going to walk it again. I'm definitely going to walk it for a third time, and I'll probably buy myself another shell in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and wear that for the third time as well. But it just felt right to leave it there. So that's actually my shell, and yeah.
Wow. So when you put your shell on the tree, do you put your name on the back of it or anything like that, or just hang it up?
I honestly can't remember. I don't know. I don't know if I had a pen or anything. I actually honestly can't remember whether I did or not. I would have liked to have thought I could have at least put my name in the year, like 2019, but that's what I would have done. But I can't remember if I did or not. It would have purely depended if they'd had a texter or something there for me to use. So maybe they might help me above and remind me. But
take a texter with you next time, a permanent marker.
Something else you can carry on your back.
Yeah. Alrighty. So next we have this little gem.
So this is the first day. So when you leave Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, I think it's about 12 kilometres. You're on the French side of the border in the Pyrenees. So this is actually at the French-Spanish border. And I can't remember who took the picture for me. Oh, yeah, sorry, no, I do, yes. So a funny story, I'd met this girl on the first pilgrimage that I did. And when I posted that I was doing it the second time, she contacted me and said, hey, what are your dates and all that? So I ended up delaying my trip on the second one by half a day to wait for her. She could only get there by lunch. I can't remember. She got there about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock on the day. So I waited for her to arrive off the train. And then, we started walking that afternoon. So yeah, but that's at the French-Spanish border.
Just to remind the people, so French-Spanish border would be whereabouts on this?
Oh, God. So if you look at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on the far, and then
far
the next
right.
one down is called Roncesvalles, which is on the Spanish side. So it's probably about a quarter of the way from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still quite early in the day. And just so people know, that first leg from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Roncesvalles, it's about 24 kilometres and you're climbing 1,600 feet. It's a big day.
Wow.
And you just seem to go up and up and up and up and up. And especially leaving Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, it's quite steep the first bit. So, yeah, good time.
I remember them showing that on the movie too. It was one of those things of like, yeah, it was really steep.
Yeah, when he starts
really
off.
steep.
Yeah, you can see how steep it is. Yeah.
Oh, dear. All right. So our next one is this really cool thing. I was like, yeah, we've got to have that. Because that was something I was asking you about when we watched the movie. It was like, what's these yellow arrows?
Yeah. The yellow arrows are everywhere. Over the years, and probably starting maybe 10, 15 years ago, a lot of people were still getting lost, even with the guidebooks and that. So there's been actually groups and local villages and stuff like that have actually gone the extra mile to get out there and paint these yellow arrows. And that's literally your guide. I mean, you can have guidebooks and apps and stuff, but these arrows are everywhere. And especially like when you come to roads and intersections and things like that, they are really, really useful and handy. I mean, I could probably walk it when I do it the third time and really not need arrows. Because when I walked it the second time, everything was just like, I remember that. It was just so. But the arrows are a pilgrim's friend. And depending on what county, or I'm not sure what they call them, they're municipals. There's a lot of different signs and that. And once you get to Galicia, which is the last big one in Spain, the last big area, municipal. It's not quite the right term, I think, but anyway, it's like the states almost. Yeah, like the states, like South Australia, Western Australia, Victoria, and that. So that would probably be their equivalent. Like Galicia, Leon, and something that's two called together anyway. But the yellow sign, the yellow markers are consistent all the way through the arrows, and you're literally following the arrows. And then cool. I took that photo as well. I did take one from a better angle, but on the left of the building there, you can see beautiful, and so many beautiful pieces of artwork on sides of buildings and stuff. Yeah, I love it.
And I'm guessing, knowing that it's sort of roughly 900 kilometers long, that this is about halfway along, correct? Being that it says 476 kilometers to Santiago.
Yeah. So remembering, like I don't think you brought up the sign yet, but when you get to Roncesvalles, which is your first big stop, there's a famous sign there, which I think you've got it, so you'll show it later, where it says Santiago is 790 Ks. So, I mean, it's over 800 because it's 24 kilometres to get to there from. So if you deduct that from
that's why I'm like, it's roughly halfway, right?
Roughly halfway, yeah.
And so maths was never my strong suit. So halfway. Now, this one, I knowing how much you absolutely love this aspect of being alive and being embodied, I'm not surprised that you gave me this one to share with everybody. So let's have a look at that one.
That was actually my second Camino in 2019. And honestly, that was the first time I've ever had chorizos. And chorizos and the hot chocolate, divine. Chorizo's freshly made, and the hot chocolate is hot chocolate. It's not some powder mixed with hot water. And it when it's hot and it's runny enough and thick enough, so you can dip your chorizo in and it just hangs on it. And it was, for someone who has a sweet tooth, it was an absolute delight.
Totally. It's like you can even actually, looking at that image now, I can see, like, especially the cup that's a little bit higher up, you can see just how thick it is, because that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you said to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, so that was my first, like I said, first time having chorizos, and I can't wait to get back to Leon to have them again. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah. All right. Hi, Lynn. Lovely for you to join us. Thank you. All right. Now, tell us about this little cross, please.
Okay.
It's just such a sweet thing.
And I don't know if you can see it or not for anyone, but that's what I'm actually wearing. Probably can't really see it, but I'm actually wearing that cross. So on the second Camino in 2019, I was staying in this village called Atapuerco, which is before Burgos. So from Atapuerco, and then you walk over the mountain and then into Burgos, which is one of the big cities, and you can see it on the screen there. So I was staying in this village in Atapuerco, and I was psychically attacked by this entity. And I was always taught that we have the power, and if you tell these things to go, it must go. And this, whatever was attacking me, would not leave. And then it just, I don't know where it come from. It come from above, higher self, God, whoever above. And it just, I didn't even think about it. I just spoke the words, and I just said, in the name of Jesus Christ, you must go. And this thing was gone. It was just instantly gone. And I was just like, even that blew me away. And then I think it was about 3 days later, I was just walking on a dirt path, and something shiny on the path caught my eye. And it's not a very big cross. And but it just caught my eye. So I bent down, and that was it. Yeah. So I honestly believe and have no doubt, with the experiences of the couple nights before, where I was psychically attacked and then woke up in dream state with this entity still there, and then to be gifted that cross, the way I come across it, that just walking and just something caught my eye. So I accept that as a gift from God, the divine, maybe Jesus himself. You know, and as you know, I have much faith and love in Jesus, not from a Christian point of view. No, nothing ill towards the Christians, but I just think of Jesus, you know, as obviously an ascended master and a great man who come to this planet to teach unconditional love. But anyway, so with all those experiences that I happened, and finding that cross, or not finding it, being gifted that cross, yeah, very, very big moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tina's coming to join us. Hi, Tina. No, just saying, it's like this story that you're telling us is like just wow. Like that's such a cool story. And Lynn was saying that powerful light worker. That's exactly what you are.
Thank you.
So yes, of course, if anybody has any questions for Matt while he's rambling through these images that we're doing our little chat today, feel free to ask. He'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about it. And we'll just periodically flip between the map and back to these other images so that you can get an idea of where he's at. All right, so next one.
And just sorry, before that as well, if anyone ever wants to contact me privately to know more about it, to chat about it, as Lorene will tell you, I love to talk about it. It's just such a powerful, but it's just such a powerful experience. And like I said, I know I'm going to do it a third time, and it's just, and every time I've done it, it's been life changing for me. So yeah, sorry, yeah, next. So
be honest, this is just one of my favorite images. And you know why? Because it's got you in it doing the things that you love. You're on the Camino, you're playing your flute, you're just in your space, you're in your magic, you're just so there. And it's just like, this image to me is just like you sparkling. And it's like, it's just got all those elements that are just uniquely you. And so this is definitely one of my favorite images out of the ones we've got to show tonight.
Cool. So
tell everybody about it.
Yeah. So the backstory for the second Camino in 2019. Before I went, I was guided, my intuition from above, that I required to take my beloved Native American flute with me. And even before I'd left Australia to go, I knew it wasn't coming home with me, that I would meet someone and that I needed to gift my flute to. But I'd had that flute for about 10 years and I loved it. It was a part of me. So what I would do with it is I would just go and play where I was drawn to play. And I met so many beautiful people, made so many connections through just following my heart and playing it when and where I was drawn to play it. So in this particular picture, I have no idea where it is. It's obviously way out in the countryside. That was an old farmhouse ruin. And I even think in the background, you can see the green, there was a farmer and his tractor ploughing up the field. So I was just walking along. That was about 20 metres off the road. And again, you can see my backpack on the left. I just went, yep, I need to stop and play here. So that's what I'd do. I'd just stop, drop my pack, get my flute out, and I'd just play. And because when I play, I just close my eyes and play what comes from my heart. And then this picture was just taken by someone that I'd previously met, and I wasn't walking with them, but they'd been walking along and saw me there playing the flute. So they just stopped, took a photo of me, and I met up with them that night at the next village, whenever it was, and they passed the photo on to me. But I had some really cool experiences with that flute. One morning I was walking and it was still dark, and so I was walking on this path. It was out in the countryside, and then the path went straight ahead, but the Camino, the path veered to the right. And then there was just enough light, we could just see some like cement bench seats and stuff. So it wasn't a park, it was just like a table and cement table and seats. So I thought, well, I'm going to stop here, play my flute and watch the sunrise. And it was quite funny, while I was sitting there playing the flute, I could hear these voices coming along, and it ended up being two guys, and they were chatting, and they'd actually missed the turn to go right and walking straight ahead. And they couldn't see me. They didn't know I was there. And I just sang out, "Hey guys, you've got to go back." And it was quite funny. And they stopped. And I said, "Yeah, you've got to go back and then turn right." And so it was, yeah.
They missed the big fat yellow arrow.
Well, it was dark. There was just enough light because these particular paths were quite white, like whitish stones. But it was just enough light to see where you were walking. So they turned around, went back and went the right way. So
I love it. Alrighty. So the albergue is something that they speak of a lot in the way. Can you explain what that means, please?
Okay, so albergues and refugios, which you see less and less of refugios, which is Spanish for refuge, are where pilgrims stay. So you get a passport when you start your Camino. Wherever you start it, you got to go to the local pilgrims office and get a passport. So everywhere you stay along the way, you got to get that stamp, because that proves that you've walked the path and stayed. And you need one of them to stay in the albergues anyway. And the different places, I've seen people do it wherever they stop, may get stamps of different things like that. I did that a little bit on the first Camino, but the second Camino I didn't bother, because it was like the tourists taking photos of everything. I just didn't need to. I'd done it the first one a little bit, so And this albergue here has very big significance for me. This is in a tiny little village called Piros, which is after a bigger town called Cacabelos. And it's on its way to Santiago. I don't know. I can't read. That's a bit small for me.
How far along would it have been?
Oh, good. Now you're asking questions. We'll come back to that. I want to speak more about the albergue.
Yes, do that.
So on the first Camino in 2016, I walked through Cacabelos, and I was going to stay at this next village, which was about 7 k's further on. And it was a stinking hot day, and there was a big tree on the side of the road, and you can't see the albergue from the main road. You can't see it till you start going down the path. And I'm standing under this tree, and my body just went blue. And I knew there was no way I was going to be walking another 7 k's. So I ended up walking down to this albergue, and I ended up spending 2 nights there because I got really sick. My body was just depleted. I hadn't been eating that well, and all the energy you spend. You know, when you're sick and you're getting the hot and cold shakes. Well, that's what I got that first night staying in the albergue. So I spent a second night there and just rested that next day. I hardly ate anything, just stayed in bed most of it. But I just happened to read on a sign that they were looking for hospitalieros in November. Now, the hospitalieros, so these are people that have walked the path, pilgrims, and I think you have, unless you own or something, but I think you have to have walked the Camino to be able to work that, to be a hospitaliero. So what the hospitalieros do, especially in this albergue, is when the pilgrims come in the afternoon, we check them all in, and then we cook their dinner, and then when they leave in the morning, we clean up, we strip all the beds, everything gets cleaned, the toilet, showers, beds made, all the floors are mopped, swept, mopped, everything just gets cleaned, reset up for the next lot of pilgrims coming in. And now getting back to my experience, that first day I got there, as you can imagine, I was just and I was sitting there waiting, and they went and got me a tub with salt water in it that I could soak my feet in while I was waiting to be checked in and all that. And it was those little things that I went, wow, this is pretty cool. And then, like I said, staying there for that extra day, that next day, I just happened to see the sign, and I inquired about it because I told them, that I had like roughly 2 weeks I was going to have spare after I'd finished walking, because I had no idea of time frame. So I actually booked my flights 10 weeks apart, just so I knew I had plenty of time.
It's going to take me 10 weeks to walk this bloody thing.
and both times I did it in about 7. So, all things being even, once I'd finished and got to Finisterre, I'd gotten the phone number, I rang them up, and they said, yeah, come back. So I got a bus back to Santiago, and then a bus back in. I ended up spending 2 weeks in this very albergue here, working as an hospitaliero. And
there you go.
It was a great experience. And Ma, who was the owner, she and her ex-husband split their time there, managing it while it was open. And we just had this really good connection. And the fact that she was quite spiritual and had her own medicine drum. So I actually did some shamanic healing for her, and I did some chanting and drumming stuff and drumming meditations while I was staying there for some of the pilgrims. I did, because we'd do things like to earn a bit of money, so we just asked for a donation. I remember one American woman, she had a frozen shoulder, and I did some massage on her shoulder, and she ended up giving me €20. And I was like,
oh, wow.
20 euro, that's pretty cool. So it was just really a really great experience. And like I said, especially in that albergue, there's something special. It's a tiny little village. It's the only albergue there. There's no shops or nothing else there. It's a very, very old, tiny little village. Wow. But like I said, you had Cacabelos, which is like 2.2 k's before that, further down the hill. Cool experience.
Very cool.
So I did explain. So the albergue is the accommodation for the pilgrims.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next we get into this one. Wow.
Cool. Now,
yeah, cool.
So this is from my second Camino in 2019, and I went about a month later. So it wasn't till nearly beginning of October. I think I remember about 4th of October or something. I think I left. So I left a whole month later than I did the first time. And of course, obviously, as you can see, we were coming into their winter. And that was high up in the mountains. And I spent 2 days walking in snow.
2 days.
Yeah, the first day that it started off, I started walking. I can't remember the village. I should have got the sheet out that had the list of it. So I stayed in this village, and all day you're just walking up and up and up and up till you get to. And for those that have done it will know where I'm talking about. So where I stayed that night is a village called O Sobrero. But you're basically just walking uphill all day to get there. So it just started off. You see, I can't read that. So in my eyes.
Was it before or after Burgos?
No. So for those who can see, you got Ponferrada, which is in darker black, and then there's Villafranca de Bierzo. That was that village that's 7 k's on from Piros that I was initially going to stay at, and O Sobrero's after that. That's the next one out on the right hand side of it. So
okay.
I guess there we're nearly 3/4 of the way through.
Gotcha.
If you're taking the whole thing is from Saint Jean Pierre de Port to Finisterre, I don't know why I'm waving my hands at no one. Finisterre. So O Sobrero is about 3/4 of the way, and it's right up in the mountains.
Right. Now I did just gonna interrupt you for a second because I found remember at the beginning you were talking about there are a bunch of different ways of doing it. So I found this. So we've got the French way, we've got the North Coast Camino, we've got the Portuguese way, we've got the number 4 and number 5 is the primitive way. I don't want to say that terribly.
Primito, the Del Norte, which is the north. There are different ways, and
so you obviously followed the number 1, which is the French way.
Yeah, and who knows? Once I've done that for a third time, I'd love to do the Portuguese one. All the pictures I've seen from some of the Camino groups I'm in, some of the pictures I've seen from people that have done the Portugal one is just amazing. So I'd love to do that one as well.
I'm surprised you wouldn't want to do the Portuguese one next.
No. For me, I really feel I need to do the French way for the third time. Who knows? Hey, if I win lotto, I've got plenty of money and I have no time.
You might do them both. Can you do them in reverse?
Yeah. Look, so see, some people do them in reverse. So if you go number 1, so even if I don't go to Finisterre, come back to Santiago de Compostela, because that's where a lot of the other ones finish and start from. So I could actually go back to there and then do the Portuguese one. Yeah. And spend 2 to 3 months walking. Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, it is. Look, after the first couple of weeks, your body gets used to it. I mean, yes, you get your sore feet and everything and your body, but after those first couple of weeks, your body just gets used to it and you just enjoy yourself, Even when you're doing some days where you're walking up really steep hills, you just get there, you have a break and you keep going. It doesn't, you're not like you are early on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So here's another one.
Yeah. So this is the first day. This is in the Pyrenees. I can't remember the significance of this gravesite, but it's very old. So I'd say it would have been a pilgrim in the earlier days that had died there. But that's getting close to the top of the Pyrenees. As you can see, there's not a lot of trees, not a lot of grass. It's all very ground cover.
Absolutely beautiful, though. Stunning.
Oh, yeah. Look, that first day as you're walking up and up and up from Saint Jean Pied de Port, as you get higher and higher, the valleys open up, and you can just start seeing all these little villages, little farming villages and stuff everywhere, and it's truly amazing. Like the Pyrenees are so beautiful. And when you get to the Spanish side and you start walking through, it's totally different scenery. It all changes.
Isn't the
Totally
planet
different.
a beautiful thing?
It is. And there's no better way to see it than walking it.
True that.
You know, you can drive by, you can bus by, even a push bike. You don't see the things you see walking. So this is still the first day in the Pyrenees. Just a couple of beautiful horses. Well, the mummy and that was her foal. Lying down on the ground. And there's a lot of horses
He's not
roaming
dead.
around.
He's just enjoying the sunshine.
No. It definitely wasn't dead. I wouldn't have taken a photo if it was dead. It's quite funny. So like you get sheep, you get goats. I'm not sure. I didn't know if I saw any cows, but there's horses that roam freely up there because there's no fences, but they have bells, and I don't know. Someone did explain it to me, I'm sure, once, the significance behind it. But the bell, I think it's so the shepherds can find them, but I think it also keeps them together. Like the rest sort of stick with the ones, you know, they put the bell on the leader of the pack, or so to speak, or something. And if that's not quite right, I do apologise because I can't remember exactly how. But the bells are significant. So I think so the shepherds can find them, so that keeps them together, because it's quite thing. You just hear the banging, the clonking of the bells, cowbells, yeah.
Yeah, like the cowbell. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was like visualizing first, like a high sort of tinkle of a bell, and then I was imagining also like that deeper dunk 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 of a cowbell.
And that's exactly it. It's those cowbells that, dunk, dunk, it's a cool sound.
Yeah, wow. So hi to Melinda. She's coming to join us and listen to your stories today. So thank you for joining us. And Lynn from New Zealand is like, wow, the body is amazing. That's for sure. Definitely, I agree. All right, let's have a look at the next image. Oh, there's that one that you were talking about.
Okay, so this is that sign this is that sign I was talking about. So this is in Roncesvalles, which is the first stop on the Spanish side. And where you stay in Roncesvalles, it's a big old monastery, you know, where they used to train the priests and stuff. Very old, massive buildings. Again, I've got photos somewhere, but, you know, I could spend 2 hours just doing a slideshow on all the photos of different things and that. But this is the sign, as you've seen, that's in the way. They show that sign as they start walking off. And then I'm sure that 99% of all pilgrims that have walked this way have had a photo taken or taken a photo of that sign. So,
yeah, love it.
Now, this is one of my favourite pictures. So, once you get into Spain, it's in Navarra. And it's the Basque country. The Basque are very, very proud, a very proud people, and they have basically their own language, which I think is quite similar to Spanish, but they do have their own language, and I think, there used to be, there was a separatist movement years ago. I think there was a bit of violence and stuff, but the Navarra or the Basque people are very proud and have their own traditions and everything, which is actually separate from the rest of Spain. So,
wow, yeah, I love what you're saying about the murals on the walls. It's like it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, and you can read sort of on to the left. The picture says, "Welcome to the Basque country." And even in Saint Jean Pied de Port, you'll see a lot of signs on some of the shop windows. And I should have brought something, and I didn't. No regrets. Try not to have regrets.
You're going to do it a third time. You can go back for more.
But when I do it the third time, I'm actually going to buy something that has the Basque emblem. There's a sign which represents the Basque country.
Okay.
And I'll definitely buy something that has that on it next time.
Hey, Brooke. How are you?
Hey.
All right. There's one of the beautiful pictures. Oh, I love scenery stuff.
Oh, look, yeah. And on the second Camino, I lost maybe thousands of pictures and video all up because my SD card corrupted. And because I got the poops on and got stuck in my head, I formatted it. And then someone said, "Oh, you should have taken it to the tech guys because they can usually still get everything off them." And I went,
No.
because I had so many beautiful pictures of sunrises, sunsets, mountains, the sceneries, and so most of what I've got from 2019 was I spent hours going back through Facebook and re-downloading the ones that I'd posted on my way.
Wow.
So lucky I was able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. The magic of technology.
And that's just showing one of the many just different types of paths you can walk on. You know, out in the countryside, you're walking literally just on a track, you know, like the sheep tracks you have in Australia in the hills, or little stony tracks like this. You spend a lot of time walking alongside roads on bitumen. Yeah. So I thought, I just like that picture looking down the track that I was walking on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one speaks to my my Scottish heart. My Scottish heritage heart, you know, the stone walls and things, and like those mounds just sitting on the other side with the grass just flopping over the side there. It's like, it takes me back.
Yeah, I think that would have been somewhere in Galicia,
Okay.
which is like the last state county, the big one that you walk through. Everything's always wet there, always raining.
Yeah, like Scotland. And
yeah.
Now this is my other very favorite image. I don't know why, it just is.
Yeah. No, that was actually a sunset. And I was walking the opposite way, and I just stopped and had a look around, and I went, wow. Yeah, I love the gold colours and stuff in the sky and the clouds, and
yeah, and how it's playing off of the crops and stuff. It's just like, wow, it's so gorgeous. It was like, you can almost like see. It almost looks like you can actually see the little fairies and things jumping across the top of the crops there. It's like little orbs and things there. It's just so pretty. It's probably why I love it.
So
pretty and witty. All right. Now explain what is happening here, please, because I was confused.
This is a place called Irachi. So it's actually a fountain, and there's the local winery there, and during the peak pilgrim season, they put so many hundreds of litres of red wine in the fountain for free. So it's literally a wine fountain. I'd heard about it the first Camino, but because it's on a detour or another way you can go, and because my first one, I was so stuck in my head, I didn't detour. But this is 2019, and I went, there's no way I'm missing out this time. I had my little 600 ml plastic empty water bottle ready to go, and I filled it to the brim, and I drank that 600 ml wine with my dinner that night when I'd stopped. So that literally is a wine fountain. Yeah.
So where that guy is standing, I assume it's a guy, that's where you literally get your wine from.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It's a tap or like a thing in the wall. Just like a normal water fountain would be, except, hey, red wine comes out.
All right. So, I think I don't know that I want to do that one yet. So I'm just going to jump over to here first. I've got a couple of images I'm saving till near the end.
So I just took this as a favourite because coffee, cafe con leche, and tortillas, cakes. As you can imagine, when you're carrying 12, 13, and sometimes mine got up to 15 kilos a pack, and you're walking anything from 20 to 35 kilometre days, I lived for when I could have a break and have a coffee So any village that had a coffee, I stopped and had a coffee. And just, again, coffee, bit of caffeine, perk you up, and anything sweet, or even like a tortilla, but I love my cake and that, just for a little bit of sugar, bit of energy fix. And then you walk on to the next village. I mean, villages can be 2 k's apart. They can be 10 k's apart. So, and if you're walking on a Sunday and you're out in the country, you can go through villages and there's nothing open. They literally have a siesta. Everything shuts about 2 and reopens around about 5. In some places, there's nothing, depending on the size of the village and that. But yeah, so you had to plan, and I learnt that when I knew the next day obviously was a Sunday, where I was going to be walking. So it might mean that I had to take some extra weight with me, and sometimes, just take extra food for the day because I knew I'd have to rely on myself. There'd be nothing open, and things like boiled eggs were a favourite. Always carried chocolate. I don't think there was a day that my pack didn't have chocolate in it or something sweet. Again, just for that little bit of an energy pick me up throughout the day, if you're starting to feel a bit. Yeah, but cafe con leche, which is coffee with milk, and was a very big much part of my daily ritual.
You were telling me a story about something to do with cake. There was when you were having a really, really tough day and you had walked in and you were absolutely exhausted. I think it had been raining.
Yeah, that was on my last day walking into Finisterre on the coast. And from when I left that morning from Sea, which is a CEE, is the name of the village, fishing village and that, it had just been windy, raining, and I got to about 3 k's maybe out of Finisterre, and I'd stopped and had a coffee, and I was just like, and this lady just came out. I'd been there about 5 minutes, I guess. She just came out and gave me a piece of cake, literally like what you would have seen on the plate there.
Wow.
And just gave me a smile, and I did my biggest muchas gracias, senora. But yeah, that was cool. And that's what we're talking about. And one thing, and with a lot of the little bars and stuff, even if you ordered a coffee, quite often you might get a little bit of a sausage or a little bit of cake, or in Spain they're very big on little cake things in plastic. Like you buy in the shops, you buy like a box of 24 of them. So quite often you'll just get a small little treat with your coffee or your drink. If you're in a bar and you maybe get a vodka and tonic or something, they always give you a little thing to go with it. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. All right, next we've got this little sweetheart.
Oh, yeah, that was just such a beautiful horse. And you see him all along the Camino, just in the paddocks and stuff, the different animals. But that was just, yeah. Just saw that. I love that photo. It was just a beautiful horse.
Oh, dear. Alrighty. This one should be interesting. I found this one really fascinating to look at because I was like, gosh, there's a lot going on in there.
Okay. So this is albergue in Piros, where I worked at as hospitaliero. So you can see the road. That's the main road from Cucabelas. That'll go through Piros and go through to Villafranca de Bierzo. So literally, if you can imagine, opposite that path, which is actually a little road, was this tree, and that was that time where I just stopped under there for a breather and went, my body just went nuts. And I don't believe that was coincidental that it happened. That I was supposed to go there, obviously, with everything else that followed. So that's what you see as you're walking along the side of the road, is the albergue. Because you literally cannot see it because it's quite a steep, windy path to go down to it. So that's why they've got all the photos on the board there. And it's not €5 anymore. So it's €10 now. Oh, that might be Vita. Oh, that's food, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so that was the actual sign for the albergue.
It's so beautifully, what do they call it? Kitsch. It's just very kitsch. It's like a little bit rustic, You certainly haven't sent it off to the old printers to get it done, that's for sure. Oh dear. I'm so glad you have a picture of this, because this is when we were watching the movie. I was like, did you have a picture with that too? Because it seemed to be quite significant.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is quite a famous point in the movie where they walk up and all the figures there on top of that hill. That is so freaking windy. Both times I've done it, it's just been so windy, so windy. And what you can't see is that's the top of a mountain ridge. And I don't know, might be kilometres. It's all like a big wind farm, all windmill, all those big wind turbines all across the ridge. And that, obviously, they put them there for a reason because it's so bloody windy.
It's a good place to put them.
But yeah, those that have seen the movie, that they'll recognise. So that's actually after Ponferrada. So Ponferrada obviously is famous for the, not that I condone it, but it's famous for Pamplona. Sorry, not Ponferrada. So Pamplona, as you can see,
up near the start.
That's about 3-4 days in from the start. So Pamplona is famous for the running of the bulls. Ernest Hemingway, and quite interesting fact. Well, it is to me anyway. In 2019, I actually sat and had a coffee in this really old cafe that Ernest Hemingway made famous, because that's where he'd always go and drink and write and
Wow.
do stuff. Yeah. Not that I really know who Ernest Hemingway is. I know he was a writer.
He's a famous writer.
Excuse my ignorance, but I've actually had a coffee at the same bar that he used to go and have coffees at when he lived in Pamplona. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. All right, now we're getting into some more of my favourite images.
No, that's another snow one. Yeah, that's cool.
So whereabouts was this?
God knows.
It looks like it's in an albergue. I was like, there's got to be an albergue somehow, being that it's full of plates and chairs and patio set.
Yeah, well, to the left, there's people looking at the picture. So to the left, there's like a bar. I don't think it was an albergue. I think it's just a bar. I don't know they had accommodation. It was just a bar. And I can remember it from 2016. So if you look over top of the tables and chairs, can you see like trees in the distance?
Mm-hmm.
So where that is, it's actually quite a steep path that leads up to that. And I can remember it from walking it the first time. There was obviously no snow then, and getting to the top, and there was just like people everywhere. There was pilgrims everywhere. And then when I walked it this time, I reckon I was walking in about a foot of snow. So it was quite hard work.
Wow.
And when I got to the top there, I'm looking around, and I couldn't see lights or anything. And they must have seen me looking around like a bloody, like a lost tourist,
like a lost pilgrim.
Because this gentleman came out, opened the door, and said, "Come on."
You're almost there. Keep going.
So I went in, and I reckon I spent about 40 minutes there and had 2 coffees. I had a fire going, got all my outer layaments off, my outer clothing garments off, so they could dry by the fire and that. And I think I had about 2 coffees. I said about 40 minutes. I'm pretty sure I had hot tortilla for a snack. But as far as the snow goes, I loved it. It made my inner child just happy. Mm-hmm. And I was warm enough. I had good weather gear. So on that side of things, it didn't bother me. And it was just such a thrill from someone who grew up in the dry red dirt of country South Australia to be in the mountains with snow, and that was like, for me, it was just really, really cool.
Yeah, I love that too. That's one of the things I do miss about not living near a mountain anymore.
So yeah, this is still later on that day, because that night I stayed in O Sobrero. So this is getting up into the top of the mountains. And as you can see, I was just getting up to the level of it had been starting to snow and all that. And that's just a dirt track was just turning to sludge. And I'm glad I had my hiking poles with me, because at places it was very slippery. It was just like walking on ice because the ground was getting frozen and it was muddy and slippery. And and I just thought I'd stop and take a photo because it was just something different.
Yeah, completely different. I think what you're just saying about being outside the pub, this is what this reminds me of. It's like there's a snowy pilgrim lost in the way.
And it's quite funny because I can remember this quite well from the first time because there's like a car park around this statue. And I remember it distinctly, and I hope I don't upset anyone. I remember it distinctly because there was a whole heap of cars full of hunters, and they all had trailers with their hunting dogs, and the dogs were all feral things. So that's why that stood out. And to walk it the second time and just see him covered in snow, had to take a photo. Yeah.
I love how they've got all these sorts of little statues and marker points along the way, funnily enough, along the trail, so that it's like you can tell they actually really care about the spiritualness of this particular journey. That's like they care enough to create what would have been a very expensive statue to create. The materials for it would not have been cheap.
No. And obviously, because it's all covered in snow, so there was a whole big thing to it. There's lots of statues along the way. There's a lot of stuff's been dedicated because Spain's is a very Catholic country, and like I said, the Camino was basically taken over by the Catholic Church 1,000 years ago. So there's a lot of significance and there's a lot of respect for the pilgrims, the people that do walk it. And they're pretty well looked after, obviously, you're going to get people of all sorts. And I know pilgrims in the past, we've heard stories where pilgrims have just made asses of themselves. But obviously that just comes down to human nature, sadly. But there is a lot of respect for pilgrims and even out in the countryside, you're walking past the older guys, you go, Buenos dias, buenas tardes, and wow, hello, buen camino.
All right, gotta love this one. Good old thumbs up.
Yeah. This is always a favourite of mine. So this is the last 15 Ks. I can't remember what this place is called again, but as you can read by the sign, once you leave this little bar, there's nothing for 15 kilometres. There's no bars, no shops, no toilets. There's nothing. And yeah, I like it. Eat and drink now, thanks.
That just made me giggle. I was like, oh, that's so funny. So let's see. Now we're going to get to here.
Now, this is the famous cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. So, yeah, this is it. And for those that watched the movie, The Way, or have heard of, so here's where they have the famous ceremony, what they call the Botafuera. I think that's how you pronounce it. Botafuera, something like that, where they have this big bowl and it gets filled with incense, and the priests, the monks, wherever they are, all get on these ropes and swing it through the church. And I've been blessed that did I see it? No, actually, I don't think I saw it the second time. But the first time I did it in 2016, I actually got to sit in the church for the church service and then witness the Botafuera ceremony afterwards. And it's pretty cool. And I loved it. Like I said, in the movie, in the way, like when I watched it the first time, I think it's about every time, I just about cried. When you just look at the emotions on the actor, well, I guess they're acting, but you can feel the emotion from the actors of watching it, and it was just a really profound experience, and I'm so glad I got to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with I can't remember if it was in the movie or if you were telling me about it, like the reason for the incense being swayed over the congregation, like the history of that.
Yeah. So obviously, like this has been going like 1,000 years. So in the early days, it was just like a little church, And then as pilgrims, and as it sort of grew and grew and grew, and the church and the cathedral got bigger and bigger and bigger. So with the pilgrims, they used to sleep inside the cathedral. And of course, you can imagine, you go back hundreds of years ago, with personal hygiene and the smell and everything else. And so the priests used to do incense and that as a way of cleansing out the cathedral. And that's how the ceremony started. And then it ended up now with this big pot. But yeah, that's how it started out, because it used to stink.
It's the original Glade.
Yeah, Glen 20. Sorry.
The original Glen 20.
We call it Glen 20 in Australia. Yeah.
Oh,
I do remember Glade, but yeah, that's how it started off. The priests used to do it to cleanse the church, the smell and whatever else.
And the lice and whatever else is floating around.
Oh yeah, you can imagine. But they have. Oh God, I can't think of it now. It's just eluded me. Basically, bed bugs. I'm just trying to think of the term. I was lucky enough the first time I didn't get it, and I got them the second time, actually on my way to Finisterre. So I'd left Santiago, and it's Negrera or something. I can't remember how to pronounce it. But it was the first place that I stayed in after leaving Santiago de Compostela on my way to Finisterre. And the place was just rife with bed bugs. And then I just had welts and bites all over me. And when I got to where I was staying in sea, the woman looked at me. She asked my passport and she went, no. So she was really good though. I had to take my boots off, strip all my clothes off. She had a pair of shorts and a T-shirt. The T-shirt was probably about 2 sizes too small for me. But that was everything. All food stuff, everything I had that could be thrown out got thrown out. Everything else, all my boots, she put in a bag and sprayed. Everything else, my whole pack, I actually ruined a couple of things because they weren't meant to go through the heat of the tumble dryer. But I had to go and wash everything, and then everything had to go through the tumble dryer. That was the only way to kill. I nearly had it then. The Spanish name for the bed bugs, chinches. That's a Spanish term for the bed bug. So I had the chinches badly.
Oh, no.
So when I'm walking it the third time, there's no freaking way I'm staying in that place again.
No. It's like, warning. So when you've gotten to this point with the cathedral and stuff, you get this.
Yes, you get a certificate. You got to pay for it. Or you can get a free one. But there's another one, and I think that one's all in Latin or something. There's more to a second one that you can actually pay for. So both times I've always paid the money and got the 2, and then paid for a little cylinder, a little cardboardy cylinder that they roll you do it yourself, that you roll your certificates up and pop in there. And then also, just while we're on that, interesting enough, I didn't give you a picture of it. When you walk from Santiago to Finisterre, if you go to the municipal albergue, which I think now has deferred it to another area, but they'll actually give you a free certificate for walking that leg to Finisterre. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I've got that one as well from both times.
So in the movie, they were wanting to know why you did the Camino. Did you get asked that question?
Yes. So when you get to the pilgrim's office in Santiago, they'll ask you. It's either a religious, spiritual, or basically what they call other for the walk, for the exercise. No particular reason. They just wanted to do it, and of course I've always chosen the spiritual one. So each certificate is slightly different, and I actually haven't seen what the other 2 look like, so I can't compare them. But I do believe there is a difference. That's why they ask you why you did it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So then after this lovely thing, you did this.
This is Muxia. I don't know, 20,000 ways to pronounce it. I didn't get there in the first one. But that was a special place, and I'm so glad I went. There's there's two areas, these two big rocks, and the energy around them is amazing. And I just intuitively picked up and knew that when the pagans were doing this for thousands of years, they were doing ceremony and other stuff there, very special. And so that's overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, and it was just amazing. The first time I went, it was like blowing a gale, and the rain was coming in horizontal. But I had all my weather gear and everything, and I was just happy. I was like, again, my inner child. And I've actually got a video. I've still got the video, thank God, that I'm under my poncho and it's just howling. And I filmed myself for about a minute just talking about how freaking cool it was. Even though, like I said, the wind was howling and the rain was coming in horizontal, I was just happy. Yeah. Very special, very powerful energetically, and yeah.
I mean, even just looking at this image here, it's just giving me the tingles all over. So yeah, I can only vaguely fathom what it must have been like to actually stand there and feel that energy, and just absolutely incredible. So you mentioned that you were there on a spiritual journey. So yeah. Just to sort of round out our show tonight, can you please tell us, how was the journey for you, like between the first one and the second one? Just sort of two sort of spiritual synopsises, I guess you could say, of how it was. Where did you start from on the first Camino? Like internally, how were you towards, the end of the first one, then to the end of the second one? Like, what was that progression like for you?
Oh, look, chalk and cheese. The first one, I was so stuck in my head, so many expectations. This was going to happen, and I'd even had a reading saying I was going to meet my life partner, and so I spent.
I wasn't on the Camino, sorry.
So I spent the whole trip. Every woman I'd meet, is she the one? Is she the one? But just the whole journey, and I had so many injuries and pain, and the second time I was just relaxed because I had the experience of the first one, and even my training was just opposite to what I did for the first one, and even things like I took a little trigger point ball, which I'm sure not most people know what they are. So it's about the size of a tennis ball, and it was just a bit harder and rounder, and I took that with me, and so every night I'd just sit there and I'd roll that under my feet and just get all that crustiness, just like, I do foot reflexology. So it's just like when you're doing the foot reflexology and you find what we call a gristle, or where you get the calcium buildups, and that's what hurts when you get that rubbed out to move it on. Yeah. And so every day I'd do things like that. I'd just sit there and do my thing. But I was just so much more relaxed, I didn't hurry. I didn't, the first time I did it, there was one day I did over 40 Ks, some big days, a couple of 35 days, and that just hammered my body, and which is why I had injuries, and a couple of times I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to finish, especially with the hill at the beginning, where I took all the skin off my heel, and then walking into Burgos, I strained my driver muscle, my right thigh, and I was literally in agony. So by the time I got into Burgos, I was in so much pain. Every step was like it was unbelievable. I've never had pain like that. And the second time I did it, no blisters, no injuries. I walked to how I felt. I still did some 30 plus K days, and some days if I walked 18 Ks, 18 Ks was like, shit, I'm here at 2 o'clock, not 6 o'clock. And, but I was in no hurry, because it was later in the season, there was less accommodation in that open, but there was a whole lot less pilgrims, and I never had problems finding accommodation. Whereas the first time I did, and Puente Lorene, I think it's called from memory, was one village that I couldn't find accommodation anywhere, and I was absolutely stuffed. and I had to walk another 4 or 5 k's to the next village to find accommodation.
Wow.
So yeah, just totally different experiences. The second one was just so much more. Like I said, it was in my heart. I walked to how I felt. I honoured my body, and just had a much better experience for it. And like I said, I look forward to the third time. It'll be totally different again. It'll be totally different again.
I think so, because you're completely different. Like, you've shown me some of the videos from your first one, and I'm like, you don't even look like the same person anymore. You look completely different, and it's not just about the weight loss. It's like your energy is totally different. It's like you're a lot calmer. Like that first one, you were so like just on the verge of being angry a lot. It's just like, wow.
That was the pain. And I was at least probably 20 kilos heavier than what I am now.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just to round that off, 2 totally different experiences. I honour both of them. The first one had some great moments, and the second one was just again totally different with the flute. And I I don't know, probably now's probably not the right place to talk about it, but as you know, I had a really big past life clearing, because I knew even the first time, I knew that I had a big past life, that I died walking the Camino. And I actually got this when I had that light bulb moment that I had to walk this before I'd done it the first time. And I won't mention his name, but this guy I walked with for weeks, and I felt a little bit guilty because I sort of just stopped talking to him in the end, and we never saw each other after a bit. But if anyone's watching that knows, they'll know. But he was the guy. I had this moment in Lyon with 2 beautiful friends that I've become good friends with, 2 Canadians, or she was originally from Japan, Takeo and Jason. And I just said to him, and I said, and I just gave him the story how I was just starting to get annoyed with this guy, but it was just something was building up and building up. And even there was times where I went a different path and stayed in a different town, walking the next day into this village and look up, there he fucking is, coming down this other path. And I was talking to him about it, and I said, and then I just had that moment. This was the guy that had killed me in a past life. And then when I had that realization, I had just had this full massive body, like an electric shock, like the big massive goosebumps, which is my confirmation about truth. And then the emotion, then I just started bawling, and I released it, and it was so powerful, and it was, I'm going to swear, it was fucking magical. And my 2 friends, they didn't say anything to me. They just both come up and both put their arms around me and just held me while I was crying and releasing. And that was just so powerful, so powerful. Magical experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be really interesting to see how you feel the third time walking that same spot, to go, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And just the lightness that you've been now, not only physically, but also just energetically, just so much lighter.
Yeah.
How much easier the trip is. Yeah.
And that was in Lyon. So if anyone knows Lyon in Spain, because it was funny, that guy, another good friend that I met, American guy, and someone else, they'd actually gone into the cathedral for mass. And so I went walkabouts with Jason and Tycho, and I'm so glad I did, because like I said, I've had some pretty aha moments and experience physically but this was like massive clearings and stuff, but this was just on a different scale, different level. And then I just had that realization, this was the guy that had killed me in a past life, and that was just huge to let go of that.
Yeah. Nothing is by accident.
No.
There's a reason why you had to bump into each other. There's a reason why you had to walk together all that way, so that then you'd actually get to the point where you're like, oh shit, okay, this is why. And there was a reason why you had to get irritated by that person too.
Yeah.
And that's something that when you've been in the spiritual realm for a while, you start to kind of click on these things of You know, there is no accidents. Everything is and has a purpose. And if somebody is irritating you and you can't quite figure out why, more than likely it's a past life something coming up to be cleared.
99.9% agree. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to join us and tell us about your journeys with the Camino. I have absolutely loved hearing all the stories that I hadn't heard yet. So
well, we'll have to do another follow-up because I got a shitload more.
We managed to get through all of our 30-odd images, so that's pretty cool, and I'm very happy about that. And I'm really glad that we were able to bring this story to the people so that then, you know, if there's something out there that you're kind of going, I wish I could do that, something that sparkles you, lights you up, makes you feel tasty on the inside, do it. Set your mind to it and do it, because you'll only have regrets for not doing it, you know. And even if it takes you 12 months, it doesn't matter.
And can I just add to that as well? Like, when both times when I've come back to Australia, you know, I've had people come up saying, "Oh, wow, look, I didn't always like you, like click the like button on your post, but every day I'd be looking to see, you know, what you were up to, what you'd done," and I thought that was pretty cool, you know, not out of anything egoic, but that I just felt chuffed that people were interested in my journey and following me, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love hearing about it. I really, truly do, because it reminds me and it inspires me to keep striving towards those things that sometimes feel a little bit unachievable. It's like, you can do it. Look, here's this dude, like, he went off to the Camino, like, in a whole other non-English speaking country. Like, that's pretty great, pretty rad, you know. Alrighty, so just to round up, how can people get in touch with you if they want to know a bit more about you, what the things you do, that sort of stuff?
They can send me, you know, I don't even know if I have the contact sheet on my website, but I have a website, which is soundofthekuhn.com. They can email me at soundofthekuhn@gmail.com. There's Instagram posts, but I don't take much at Instagram. But I won't give my phone number out on air, but it's no big secret. But yeah, they can go to my website, which is still a work in progress, but I'm getting there. So that's just simply www.soundofthekuhn.com, or email me at soundofthekuhn@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Alrighty, beautiful ones. I hope you have had an absolutely brilliant time listening to Matt, just like I have. I had a lot of fun putting all of those images together and, you know, working with Matt and figuring out which order to put them in and all that. So that was really a lot of fun, and hearing the little stories as we went along. And I hope he's inspired you as much as he inspires me every single day. So in the meantime, I hope you all have an absolutely brilliant rest of your week. I'll be back on Friday for Find You Fridays. And in the meantime, have an absolutely beautiful week. Oh, and this Sunday, I'm also at the Kilkenny RSL for the Adelaide Wellness Fair. Just to put that out there. Oh, and it's this man's birthday on Sunday.
No, don't tell him that. No, 27th of this month, so last Sunday in October and November, I have, which I'm hoping to be a monthly thing, my second one in a row, my sound bath and drum healing session at Queen West Yoga Studio in Seaton on Grange Road. And you can book tickets for that on the Eventbrite page, which is simply sound bath and drum healing session with Sound of the Kuhn. And you can find that on the links to that on my Facebook page, either my personal one, Matthew Kuhn, or my Sound of the Kuhn Facebook page as well.
Yay!
Yeah. And I'm drumming tomorrow night at Boffa. If anyone knows Boffa, I'll be back with John Stamalos. I'm drumming at Boffa tomorrow night.
Beautiful. Excellent. Alrighty, everybody. I hope you all have, and of course, all of those dates are all for November 2022. And so I hope everybody has an absolutely brilliant night, brilliant evening, brilliant afternoon, whatever you're up to. Get out there, do something tasty for yourself, and until next time.